Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to remember the legacy of the University of Florida Gators football program. It wasn't that long ago in the 90s, in the mid 2000s, Florida was not only respected, but feared. They were a feared program. And now they're an absolute total joke. I told all of y'all before the season, and I got to give them props. Before the season, I thought Florida would go 3-9. I gave them wins over Charlotte, McNeese, and Vanderbilt, and that was it. And you know what? I was wrong. They were able to beat a pathetic South Carolina team, and they pulled an upset on Tennessee. And the season's not over. They could get to a bowl game, but no. Billy Napier can't win a road game, so there goes LSU and Missouri. And then their last game is their toughest game with Florida State at home. And the Swamp better, the Swamp Magic, forget it. They got beat by Arkansas in the Swamp. The crazy, hard to win play. Arkansas beat you in the Swamp. That was Arkansas's first win over a Power 5 opponent this year. And it was you in the Swamp, the hard place to win. I think the reason they beat Tennessee isn't because the Swamp's so hard to win. It's because Tennessee can't beat a rival on the road. And they never will beat a rival on the road. That's why Tennessee lost to Florida in the Swamp. It has nothing to do with Florida being good. Florida's trash. I've said it all year, and it's fitting. It's fitting that they wore all black for the Arkansas game. Because they knew they were going to lose that game, and their season was done. Now we can look towards next year. Because that's all we do at Florida nowadays is look towards next year. Next year, they have a chance of being good. They actually have a really good recruiting class, and I don't think you should get rid of Billy Napier. As much hate as I throw on Florida, I think you give him the third chance and see if he can pull what Mike Norvell pulled at Florida State. But do I think he'll do it? No. Because I think Florida is done. Until like the third coming of Steve Spurrier shows back up until Tim Tebow chooses to be a head coach, Florida will not be any good as a football program. Period. They might get 7 or 8 wins here or there, but they will never, ever, never win a national title over the next 20 years.
And I don't know how we're going to do this, Freddie, but somehow we've got to stick this to Quinn. And so when he's wrong, even if it's 50 years down the road, that they're never ever going to win this national title, that we've got to stick this back to Quinn somehow.
They can't do it in the next 20 years.
19 years, whatever it is. I don't care. Personally, Quinn, you're wrong. Just straight up wrong. I don't see sunglasses on right now, but you got some hater shades on, brother. And let me just say, they won the games they were supposed to this year, and then they lost the games that they were supposed to this year. Now, trade 1-for-1 Arkansas to Tennessee. Let's mark those off. But they lost to Utah, top 15 team, lost to Kentucky. That's a quality loss. I like the Kentucky loss. I do.
Quality loss.
I like the Kentucky loss. And then Georgia. Come on. It's Georgia. And I don't think they're done. I think they go.
There's no shot.
There's no chance.
2-1.
Hold on. What?
Last 3.
Real quick, I want an apology from both of you from back in the summer when I picked Arkansas to win this game, and you both told me it was the most insane thing you've ever heard.
How do you remember that?
I'm holding because I vividly remember my Florida take because y'all were both just flabbergasted at it. You thought it was the dumbest thing you'd ever heard, and here they are. They're not going to make a bowl game. Well, I'm holding that receipt because the Pigs did it, man. They went into the Swamp. They won there for the first time ever.
You did say that they were going to go 3-9, so you basically had Florida losing to everybody. So that's the Arkansas one was just a dart on the wall.
That is fair. Okay, all right. Look, Chase, are you done? I don't want to cut you off. I don't want to cut you. Florida's an absolute dumpster fire, and they're an embarrassment to the SEC right now. This is going to be their second losing season in a row. Next year is going to be their third losing season in a row. Because look at their schedule, dude. Look at their – have you taken a look at their schedule? They play all three of the Florida schools, Miami, UCF, and Florida State. They may go 2-1 there. They may beat UCF. They're getting beat by Miami next year. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't care what recruiting class you got. Texas A&M proved this. One recruiting class does not elevate to wins the very next year, right? Normally it takes 2 years per recruiting class in order to elevate wins. They're getting beat by Miami. That's one loss. Getting beat by Georgia. For sure, Georgia. Getting beat by Florida State. Getting beat by LSU. Getting beat by Texas A&M. Getting beat by Texas. And then at Tennessee. So I could easily see 7 losses again next year.
And that's not even counting the mediocre SEC teams that are going to end up beating them too.
Yep. I mean, that's not counting the Kentuckys, right? That's not counting Ole Miss. I mean, I didn't even mention Ole Miss, really. Mississippi State, and they could probably beat Mississippi State. We will give them a Mississippi State win. But here's what I'm getting at, though. Billy Napier, I promise you, it does not look like he knows what he's doing. Like, he looks like he is so lost on the sidelines sometimes. Like, yes, he may be able to recruit well, and yes, they are 13th heading into next year in recruiting, but they were around there last year in recruiting and the year before. Now, my issue, I don't think Billy Napier is a high-level FBS head coach yet. Now, that's not saying he couldn't be in the future. I think they made a mistake in hiring him when they did with no high-level FBS head coaching experience at a place like Florida where you're expected to win and win a lot. Like, that's just the expectation. So I don't think you bring in somebody like that, one at, what was he at, Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. Congratulations, okay? You should not have stepped up to the big boys here in the SEC at Florida. It's just an absolute dumpster fire. They're going to have 3 losing seasons in a row, and at that point, you got to fire him. Honestly, I would be perfectly okay if they fired him at the end of this year.
I got one more thing I want to add. For years, post Urban Meyer, right? I feel like Florida has been propped up by a really, really bad SEC East. There was a stretch from about 2013-ish until Georgia showed up in 2017, that 4-year stretch. Florida won the East twice in it because there was nobody in the East to win. Like, a mediocre Florida team had an inflated record because they got to play a really bad Vandy, a really bad South Carolina, a really bad Missouri, a really bad Tennessee, an average Georgia. Like, they just got to stack up these nothing wins. And for the next handful of years now, that's done. I believe their protected rivals are Georgia, Kentucky, and is it Tennessee? Yeah, I know it's Georgia and Tennessee, but I think Kentucky's the third one.
Sounds right.
Well, in 2025, the only SEC game they have on the books is Georgia.
Okay. So
now, those aren't finalized yet. Like, the rivals, I don't think are officially finalized yet. But Florida State and Georgia are their protected rivals, even though Florida State's not in the SEC. So,
well, I know there was the talk about doing 3 protected rivals in the SEC. If that's the case, I know for a fact Tennessee and Georgia will be 2 of them. And then it'll either be South Carolina or Kentucky as the third one. Either way, that means you're losing Missouri. You're losing Vandy as, like, every year, like, cakewalk games. Like, no offense to Missouri. I know they're doing good this year, but most years Missouri's like a 6-win football team. So.
But Vandy beat them last year. Last year. Yeah. I mean, so that's the other thing. These easy games are no longer cakewalks for the University of Florida. Let's just throw that out there. And does that not warrant some change?
Let me throw this to you. Florida historically hasn't even been a good football program. They were good in the 90s through the mid 2000s.
Right.
That's it. They were the dumpster fire team of the SEC for decades.
And you know what, guys, for you Florida fans out there, let me just give some love back because these guys have just got the shades on. So I think this season goes a lot differently because in the off season, and this is where NIL comes in and gets a little finicky. They had an agreement with that quarterback that ended up going to Arizona State. The NIL deal fell through, and so he decommitted from Florida, and they had to scramble to get the Wisconsin kid.
No,
and he has not been good for them.
Do you know who screwed that deal up? Florida.
Well, yes, yes. But at the same point, NIL shouldn't be the reason that kid's going to sign there. He should want to go there first of all, and then NIL comes second.
But who wants to go to Florida? They're trash, and they have been for like 3 or 4 years now.
Okay, and I think this season goes differently if they have the guy that they wanted at quarterback. And they didn't get him. And then you get the kid that's been in college for the last 10 years and hasn't proven anything since his first game ever played when he went like 20 of 20 for 4 touchdowns and hasn't done anything else. And so I think that really killed morale. And so with this recruiting class, probably some transfer portal additions, something like that, this offseason is going to be great. You're saying 5-7? I don't know, guys. I'm hearing a 10-2, 11-1.
They don't even have a quarterback that they're even recruiting for next year.
Doesn't matter. Transfer portal is always open, baby.
Well, that's where they got Graham Mertz, and that didn't work out.
We're going to toss him back.
At 10-2, let's go with 10-2 and give them 2 losses. Who are their 2 losses? Georgia and Florida State?
No, I think rivalry games always get me. Georgia, and I don't know. Probably some weird loss somewhere along the way.
Do you think they're going to be able to beat Texas and Florida State and Ole Miss and
it's at Texas, by the way.
No way.
It could be Georgia and Texas, but like rivalry games, you got to throw everything to the side. Like Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa State, Iowa, Kansas State, whoever. Like you got to toss everything out. And you've just got to say, all right, these people hate each other. They're going to play. That's how Florida plays Florida State. That's how Florida State plays Florida. So it doesn't matter. The only one that really doesn't matter is Georgia Tech, Georgia. That's the only rivalry game. I'm like, okay, Georgia's going to win that one. Easy.
You're absolutely wild.
You went from Iron Bowl the game, Iowa State, Iowa.
That's a great game.
I love the battle for the Cyhawk Trophy, but like,
why does he know that?
Down to there?
Like, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma.
You should have name dropped Farmageddon, dude. Kansas State, Iowa State, best name of a rivalry game all time.
Anyway, Florida's coming back. Give them the off season. They're going to be back.
Now listen, I agree. In 20 years they'll be back and have won a national championship. I agree with that. But it ain't next year, and it ain't the year after. So Billy Napier should be fired. He should be fired.
They'll be top 2 in the SEC East by the end of next year.
There's no divisions next year.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're lucky because they would be.
No shot.
They wouldn't even be top 3 if the SEC East was the SEC East next year.
No, they wouldn't.
They can't beat Kentucky anymore, so there goes that.
Guess what? Guess we'll never know, so doesn't matter.
You know what we will know? Florida's not going 10-2 next year, and Billy Napier's getting fired. That's what we do know.
Florida's top 5 team in the SEC next year. Cut it. Over.